Hello and welcome. This is podcast number 4, and this is the part 2 of the myths of happiness. I really thought I was going to be able to say everything in just one podcast, but there's just too much. So I really believe that there's so many questions that need clarifying. I hope the first one did answer many of your questions. So we said myths number 1 was I'll be happy when, I can't be happy because ... And we're very, very creative. Obviously, most of us are completely unaware of it. So becoming aware is the first step. If that's all that you realized after the last podcast, it's a giant step. Believe me, it's a really, really giant step. Be very patient with yourselves because it takes time. You see, years and years ago, with my dear friend Bettina, whom I've shared over a decade of journeying together, becoming a kinesiologist and exploring many, many things, I really thought that we could find the ultimate technique, the strategy to shortcut and go straight into resolution, healing, and all of this. And I experimented on myself. I went too fast. I got out of balance and I got even sick. I was told there is no shortcut, my dear one. It takes time. The whole point of being on this planet is to learn, is to experience, is to really understand and enjoy the falling and the walking. It's all part of the whole thing. We all know that metaphor, that example that everybody quotes, the child cannot walk without falling. It's part of the process. So be patient, enjoy your process. Take one thing at a time, one day at a time, one step at a time. But if you do with consistency, if you do it with curiosity, with the desire to enjoy the process, oh my God, in 1 year, your life could change tremendously. But even in a month, your life can really be transformed. So, I don't know if you started making your little book on the simple pleasures of life, but we did explain that concept of hedonic adaptation. So we adapt to everything, the negative, and thank God for that, because that's been extremely essential to our survival, human beings. But we adapt to the positive. It really makes us lose the thrills, lose the excitement of something new. Therefore, the only way is enjoying the process, going back to basis, going back to this simple truth, which are everywhere around us, the wisdom, the pearls of wisdom that we find in the ancient texts and ancient traditions, which have been perpetuated with the traditional cultures, which some people call primitive, whereas I believe that they are actually much more wise and much more elevated in their level, frequency, vibrational level than the majority of people. Anyway, we all need to experience many, many things. So, hedonic adaptation, practice of being on the journey, mindfulness, meditation, but it could be jogging, it could be taking photography, it can be creating something, sewing, baking, whatever it takes. Making food for friends and having them and being in that sharing, whatever it takes. A book with what makes me happy would be amazing there, as we spoke about in a previous podcast. And developing spontaneity, spontaneously driving to the coast if you can, and just having a meal by the sea, spontaneously calling a friend and arranging a date. All of these things are amazing. Now, myth number 2. Happy people are happy because their life is smooth and easy. Interesting. Do you know anybody around you who has had such a easy life that they haven't had to deal with any type of challenges? And they have a very functional family and they're just lucky. They're just at the right place, right time all the time. Well, you're lucky if you know people like this, because I don't. And as a matter of fact, a lot of evolved spiritual people would say, well, this is not the whole aim of what you came here. Obviously, this is something that some people will disagree with, but I was told in my writing again and again, this whole narrative, the difference between the way we handle challenges, crisis, the way we handle something like the COVID-19 is how much we understand that Zen story of the second arrow. Because really, the way I read that story is that things happen in life. You get hurt by an arrow, it's painful. But if you take the arrow out, and that's all it is for you, you move on with your life. You heal from it. But what happens to the majority of us is that we get emotionally attached. We react to it. And that's how we get sucked into giving the circumstance a very personal meaning. We personalize it and we view it through our own filters. People who have a propensity for happiness are aware of this. They understand that we're like a computer, and our belief system, our mindset can be likened to the hardware. And if I talk about my own example, I would say that in my hardware, there's definitely programs running about suffering. It's a big one. Definitely comes from the culture, France, the French country, mostly Catholic. There's a lot of identification with the suffering, but there's a lot of it which comes from my own lineage, the ancestors in my family on both sides, the skeleton in the cupboards, the untold stories. There's a lot of rejection, abandonment in my childhood, inheritance, in my ancestral lineage again, and a lot of not being good enough, unworthiness. Really, these are three themes that I've been experimenting, obviously unconsciously. And this has been really entangled with shame and guilt and pain and anger, a lot of anger actually. So this is in my software, and whether you believe in past lives or parallel lives, or it doesn't matter, but it's all in there for us. Sometimes we react in ways which doesn't seem to really be coherent, and it comes from the epigenetics, what's being passed from generation to generation. But there are as well, in my own personal computer system, many programs about love, connection, mystical experiences which have really taken me out of the boundaries of this world, meeting extraordinary people who have transformed my life and shown me that the impossible is possible. They've cured themselves from an incurable disease, and I've met quite a number of them. They've manifested oil and sound out of thin air, crazy stuff. There's divine synchronicity. So all of this is in my hardware, and it helps me to navigate a crisis a very personal way, where I know who I want to emerge as. Like in podcast number 2, we explain, out of a crisis, there's 2 questions that are really important. How can I navigate this crisis in the best way that serves me? And who do I want to emerge as? How do I want to grow from it? So I will say that happy people are not happy because their life is smooth and easy. They have hardwares, they have programs in their personal computer mindset system, which really helps them to navigate a crisis, a challenge, in a very personal way. They have a tendency to resilience, a natural propensity to being a detached or getting there after bouncing back, and really a natural ease into becoming the observer. And when you develop becoming the observer, you step out of the drama, you step out of the narrative, you step out of the emotional attachment, you step out of the reaction, and you observe. Yes, one part of you will still be in the pain if it's extremely painful, but one aspect of you is observing it. So you're not all in it. You have a multidimensional perception of it. You know that it is only a part of you. And the beautiful thing is that when you see that in yourself, then you see it in others. And you can develop then the same compassion, the same patience, the same understanding with others. But let's remember the most important thing. The Anais Nin quote that I gave in number 1 podcast. We do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Well, Joe Dispenza, whom I've already quoted as well, says, no new information can go in our brain that is not equal to our state. I'll repeat this. No new information can go in our brain that is not equal to our state, which literally means that our state determines how we decipher the world, how we can comprehend, how we can analyze and assess others, our circumstances and everything. It all starts within. All we seek is within. Therefore, people who have a natural propensity for being happy naturally, consciously or unconsciously, apply these tools, these strategies. So this was the myth number 2. I hope this is clear enough. Just to finish on this one, I will add what Viktor Frankl, who wrote A Man's Search for Meaning, incredible book, a psychiatrist who went through the Holocaust and came out and still had faith in humanity. How about that? This is the ultimate thing. And he said, when we can't change our circumstances, then we are invited to change ourselves. Amazing. So what is myth number 3? Well, some people will still say, well, okay, you're telling me all of this, but look, some people are born with it. Again. So we could say that there's a yes and no answer to that question. Yes, because of the genetics. Yes, because of what we spoke about in the first part of the podcast number 3. Obviously, people with difficult, challenging childhood, going through severe trauma, abuse, are much more inclined to have a very specific relationship with happiness, and it's much more difficult for them. But for the majority of people, the excuses, the reasons we give are much more mundane. And actually, I would invite you to consider stopping this recording and maybe think for yourself, how do I justify to myself the fact that I'm not as happy as I would love to? What are the reasons I give myself? What do I come up with in total honesty? What is limiting me? And how do I justify it? Do I blame anybody? Do I blame anything? Believe me, this is the way I started my book. I had a massive list of questions. I'm laughing about it now because basically I was blaming everybody. I was blaming my parents. I was blaming my genes massively. I was blaming my situation, my circumstances. Having to be a mom at home, even though I absolutely wanted to be one. So it was completely irrational in my case. I was blaming the society we live in. I was blaming God on a bad day. I was just blaming everything and everybody. Because the blaming, justifying it through all of these reasons, allows us to let go, allows us to not feel responsible. The problem that some people will experience with acknowledging and really taking this on is that we become absolutely aware that we have a choice in everything that happens to us. And with choice comes responsibility. And responsibility sometimes is experienced as guilt. It's my fault. But no, there's no guilt or blame. Being responsible for one's life just means that how I think, how I feel, the choices I make, the actions I take determine the quality of my life. But it's okay. Sometimes I make mistakes because I experience life from where I'm at. And the decisions I made yesterday were the best decisions I could have ever made. Even if today or a month later or a year later, I look back and I realize that that was a bit lame, that I could have done better. At the time, that's the best I could do. Love and compassion, no judgment, is the key in this. So the environment for some of us is massively more conducive to being aligned and naturally optimistic. But really, we all have the equal inner potentiality. And we can find, for example, many people who are either very comfortable people but are unhappy. First world divorce rate is the highest in the well-off circles. And there are countless number of people who are massively challenged but thrive after some painful growth, as we've explained before. So what happens if you want to push yourself and run a marathon or play the guitar or go on a diet? Is it going to happen just like that? Tomorrow I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to buy a guitar and I'm going to play the guitar? Of course not. We all know that. It takes practice because you develop a skill. Well, happiness is a skill. How about that? We're not born with it. It is a skill. The science of happiness, the science of positive thinking agree that happiness is a skill. So it is a skill. It means that we can practice it. We can become good at it. But it takes, guess what? Effort, practice, commitment, discipline, maybe in some case, but most of all the desire, that inner feeling of loving and enjoying and really putting a lot of time because you love it. Passion is the best drive. And we all know people around who are good at doing something. And yes, they might have started with a gift, a natural propensity. I've got a friend who is an amazing portrait artist, and she was talented from the beginning, and she's very good now. But guess what? She has spent hours and hours and hours over years and years and years developing her gift. I've got another friend whose son suddenly realized he loved playing the piano, and within a few years he was a grade 7. Amazing stuff, bringing us to tears with his beautiful music. Guess what? He spent hours and hours and hours at home practicing again and again and again and again and again. Yes, these two had an undeniable gift, but they've put the effort in, they've put the time because they love it. I think we all are invited to find that, because happiness is a skill. And going back to Sonia Lyubomirsky, she uses the example of the diet to explain that, yes, if you want to get into shape, you're going to have to make choices. You're going to have to do certain action, select certain ways which are going to get to a certain result. It's the same with happiness. That in itself opens up the door, because some people think that they're never going to be happy. And if you think that, please reconsider that happiness is a shift away from your experience. And once you have the courage to accept that you will take life as it is presented to you, you are in alignment with your soul. And sometimes it will be a painful disease, or a heartbreak and divorce, a stressful financial crisis that you're going to have to experience. And yes, it might be that you're having to experience. But when that happens, and you have in your belief system the deep knowing that there's a way out of this, and you will find it, you then are open to the good, and you're open to observing the bad and the ugly, because you will have to go through the dark nights of the soul, most probably, to really comprehend what the limited beliefs, the erroneous generalizations about yourself and the world, the assumptions that you've made, the subjective perceptions that are in the way, and manifest as that event or that condition, that crisis. It will be challenging and amazing. It will be painful and beautiful. It might be tragic and magic, all of it. Because we are quantum beings and everything is possible within the field of potentiality, we are both happy, peaceful, fulfilled, abundant, its opposite, and everything in between. Who we think we are, how we feel we are, who we say we are, the emotions we attach to, the actions we take, all of that determines where we stand on that spectrum. So we are right now invited to choose well. There are no mistakes, just learning, or more precisely revealing what we are made of. We live in a polarized world, in a polarized body. Our job is to find balance within ourselves and to be it in the world, because our vibes are louder than words. So please choose today to become the best version of who you can be and forget about others, because that would be competition. Just be better than who you were yesterday, and remember that cooperation is the new world which is being shaped right now. Be a player in this world. Know that you are bigger than your circumstances. You are bigger than your emotions. You are bigger than your body even. You are life experiencing itself as you. You are amazing, and your potential is beyond what your mind can encapsulate at the moment. But your heart knows. So drop into your heart. Assess your life from there with intuition, with wisdom, compassion, and love. And so be it. I love you. I send you vibes of virtual hugs, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.